Okay, so I'm, yes, you probably know, Debs Wilson. I have worked with heritage information now for, I can't even tell you how long, 93, 96. Just a little pet hobby, as it was at the time, part of my degree. One thing and another, it's led on to become virtual cities. It was the talking walls for a long while. I've done a few sites, a couple of sites. But virtual cities is something that I've really wanted to do, and I've now set it up as a spin-off company from the university. So it's Virtual Cities Limited. It's basically not just about building Winchester, rebuilding Winchester. It'll be about other places and things as well. But this one is going to be talking about Winchester and building a small prototype, i.e. a segment of Winchester in the 1400 and 1800, based on two maps, or rather one of them is a combination of maps, because I've got more detail on the 1700 map, which some of the buildings will be there still in the 1800s, but it is primarily 1800 map and a 1400 map, and an awful lot of research. So why? Why am I doing this? Basically, it comes from the talking walls and the fact that we have a very historic city. We have a lot of historic buildings. Some are no longer there, and I know software, I suppose, that allows me to build those buildings as they once were, and that's where my real heart is reconstructing buildings that no longer exist, and that people can then walk around them, see how they were lived, hear from the people that used to live there, fingers crossed, on some of them, but also in the structure of building. The building is actually bringing the data of how they were built, the materials that were used. Yeah, you're building what's called heritage building information modeling. So that is available using Autodesk Revit, but also Blender is, not that I use Blender at the moment, but Blender has also got plugins now where you can build that data in on more of a programming plugin than an actual, the easy way that Revit does it. Does anyone here know Autodesk Revit? No? No? Okay, I might show you later. So part of doing this is also to teach students how to do exactly the same thing. So we have CAD students, we have 3D environment students, we have 3D visualization students, we have developer students and so on, who are interested in also building buildings with software. Most of them, because they're taught it in the first year, use Blender. Even though I tried to get them to use Revit, because it's so quick to, it's the architectural building solution, basically. It's the industry standard architectural building solution. So if they're using that, then they're employable, they're ready for industry on just that alone, okay? But it also, by giving them a project, a client project in this sense, it gets them to work with the client and so on, and really helps. And some of the buildings you can see up there, the one at the top, you probably know it. It still exists, yeah, in Winchester. Some of you know it. I can't think of the title of the building now. It's just gone completely from my head. But Harry Pye modelled that 3 years ago. So this project has been sort of taking off over a few years, and students have come and gone, and they've been modelling things alongside of me in that period. So we've got much more I can show you, but we've got Jane Austen House just here. So you can't go into Jane Austen's house. So it's physically there, but you can't go into it. There's been architectural changes to it, but you can't go into it. It's a private house. It's not a museum, okay? A museum is out in Chawton. So if you wanted the American Jane Austen Society or other societies to come and visit this property, okay, which they do, even though they can't go in, okay, and then they go to the cathedral, etc. So they're coming all the way from America or Australia to come here, all right? But if you put that up online and you've modelled it up, and you've modelled it up faithfully as much as possible from the conversations that's been here today as well, how Jane Austen would have lived in that space in the time before she died, okay, that's going to get quite a lot of hits if it's a website, yes? But I don't want to just do a website with a model of Jane Austen House on there as a website. It needs to be part of the bigger culture of Winchester, okay? Not just Jane Austen, it's everything else that goes, because who lived on the ground floor? Who lived on the top floor? It wasn't, she didn't live in the whole house, she rented her rooms in this building, okay? So you've got various stories in these buildings going up. So who lived in the pink house? Who lived across the way? What was the community like? These are all the kind of things that the Talking Walls was really about. It's the stories of the people that lived in these buildings. The buildings themselves architecturally faithfully reproduced as much as possible, and the community as a whole, and a repository of, as you were saying, a bit of a data bit. So, but as an Unreal, which is now where we're working with, the Unreal Engine rather than 3D Max, because that's my bag that I was using for the Talking Walls. With Unreal Engine, we can put the whole city together, yeah, and we can show it through different time. John doesn't like me using the word time slices, but through time slices, okay, different periods of time. So with Malmesbury, we've got 2 separate Unreal scenes, whereas, you know, as time goes on, we learn software even more. I now know that you can actually have the 2 eras in the same, same Unreal project. So then how do you get from one to the other? Because you want to get from one to the other. So the idea of creating portals so that you can walk up to something and then go through and then you're in another era. I actually cracked that only this week. So so I can now get this, well, I'll show you later, get this person to, first person, as it turns out, to walk up to a portal, and then the delay, which I don't like, and then suddenly you're in 1400 from 1800. And you can see the space as it was in the 1400 compared to the space as it is in the 1800. That is exciting to me. I don't know if it's exciting to you, but it's definitely exciting to me. So on the basis of all of that, I managed to get high funding to set up a spin-off company. So we have a website, thanks to colleagues, and we have branding, thanks to my wonderful husband, and we have, I did try for a trademark, but apparently Virtual Cities is used by a game company, so I couldn't use that. So I will try again with a different name, but we will get it protected so that it's good, but it's there for everybody. So once the whole thing is done, people can work through it. So if I just go through to this one, I've kind of covered some of the background, but some of the images are good. These are, the top one is Hyde, part of Hyde Abbey in Winchester. This one here is part of the Malmesbury one. I wouldn't be able to have done as much as is there if it wasn't for the students, as Campbell will know with the Malmesbury one, because we had some specific, excellent students working on that, didn't we? But then I'm also a sorry, that's not the right word to use. I like to reuse what is already built in some areas, okay? No point recreating stuff that other people have already created. So, for instance, if you've got generic medieval houses or generic 1800 properties or whatever, so you can, or furniture, blah, 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 you can use those. And it's only the buildings that have got maybe a story in it that you actually make properly as it stands. Does that make sense to you now? Yeah, right. So it's really important that we don't spend time creating, and you may have found this with your guitar, you don't create stuff that people have already done. You can reuse it. So if I wanted some 1800 furniture, I might go onto TurboSquid or Sketchfab or some other place where there's models that you can access, which you can then use. So you can then populate that building with that furniture or with whatever else. Yeah, you're not actually spending a huge amount of time creating something that's already created. That doesn't make sense. So these little houses here are a pack, I think, from Unreal. So you can just go along and buy a pack from Unreal, say for $80 or even $120. How many hours of time have you saved by just buying that pack, just to populate, a bit like your procedural modeling, so that you can populate an area quite quickly? Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do anyway. But none of this is possible without research, not a single bit. So research is really, really important, and that's where the students don't always get it, because they'll think that whatever they model will be fine. And some of the Blender models are paper thin. I mean, so if you walked in there, it would be really difficult because the texturing is one side and then the other side, well, yeah, and it doesn't have any substantiality, if you see what I mean. It needs to have a thickness. The walls need to have a thickness so that you can make it feel like you're walking into something. Again, I'll show you on the Unreal site what I mean by that. So the maps you can see up in the, no, not in this slide, next slide. The maps you can see up here are two of the maps. And this one is Martin Biddle's map. And then this is, I can't remember this one here. Oh yeah, it's there, isn't it? Kitchen. So these have been particularly useful. I mean, really particularly useful. And then a lovely friend, colleague, bought me a set of 1700 maps for my birthday. Massive great maps, which I have also been able to glean information from about the area that we're doing as a prototype. So if I can, do you see my mouse? Is there a mouse up there? No. So if I stand here, so the area is a prototype is this bit here, going down to this bit here and covering Wolsey. So we're doing this one bit, which I suppose, I won't say is the oldest part of Winchester, but it's certainly quite a significant part of Winchester. So we're modelling that in 14 and 1800. And without those maps, I'd be lost. Okay, and the Biddle map gives me, or provides us with different colours to show, well, you will know about map making, but basically it will tell me whether certain buildings were still there in the 1800s from the 1400s. So I think the pink ones, just in this bottom bit here, there's some pink bits. Oh, it's over here. Okay. Yeah, so, no, let me say it differently. The orange bits, yeah, are buildings that were there in the 1400 and also there in the 1800. And also some of them still there today. Okay, I think that's about right. Whereas we've got on this map, I don't know if you can see, but on this map you've got St Mary's in the Cemetery, which one of our students this semester has modelled. So the little chapel sitting in there, somewhere there. So there's lots of buildings that are now gone. The Minster and New Minster, they were gone by the 1400s, Ryan, weren't they? Yeah. Yeah. So you won't be able to see it, but you know, that's sort of local history information that some of you might not understand. But it's been really important to get it right, so that in the 1400, each of you were saying really that it has to be true. Do you know what I mean? It has to be real. You have to have it so that people will believe what it is you're building is correct. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's the biggest part of the research, is finding all that information. Finding maps is one thing. Finding heights is completely different. You're reading lots of books or taking photos of the fronts of buildings and then bringing them into the software to actually gauge the heights. So there's a lot of technical knowledge needed in order to how to do that. And they also go into the planning department archives to find out changes that have been done to buildings. So it's all that kind of research that a student doesn't necessarily get to understand, that you can't just build it how you want to. So in a game, you can just build as you want to, can't you? Yeah? Yeah? You don't have any restrictions. It can just be what it wants. Yeah? But that's why Ryan was used for Assassin's Creed as a consultant on how it would have been, okay? Because if it was a game that wasn't meant to be Winchester, it wouldn't be a problem. But as it was meant to be Winchester, it was a problem, yeah? So that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make it as real as possible. And that's where the research comes in. But you can see the difference in Winchester on the 1400 and the 1800 is quite a lot, really. But this map, it's good, and it is the one that's 1400. But for me, or for us, it's really difficult because things aren't really the right size. And some of these little dots say it's because it's residential or there's buildings there. For every little dot, well, do I interpret that as a building, or do I interpret it as trees, or what do I interpret that as, other than it's built up? Maybe, okay? So I did use another map that was slightly earlier than that in order to get some of that information. And then this one here shows the area of the prototype. And you can see how much land was green, if you like, or grown on allotments or whatever. And then this also was also a good gauge for what that area looked like between the 1400 and the 1800. And it's just working all those things out. We're nearly there, very nearly there. So it's saying there to you, I don't need to speak it out, but action research, practice-led design, really, really important. My PhD was very much more of a collaboration, coming out with a way that mixed disciplines work together in order to achieve something, and not just one person trying to do everything. We still try to instill that with our programs. Some get it, some don't. But it's really important that the whole thing, and that, you know, what you were saying earlier and what other people have said, you really do need to work together in order to achieve something that's really good that other people can use. You can't do, I can't do it all on my own, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without students and other help. So yeah. So these are some lovely buildings done by students. So the bottom one is by Cherry, who's now in her third year, but it was a second year client project. As was the top one, which was done by Nikita Sinergio. And all these buildings are up on Sketchfab, Cultural Heritage Studies Sketchfab. So all the buildings that we're doing, they're individually being put up onto Sketchfab so that they're being accessed across the world. And the buildings that are up there currently, quite a few of them have been downloaded 20, 30 times and added to other people's collections. So what we're doing is going wider, which is really nice And it's nice that student work and my work is actually being pulled down from various countries. So that's quite nice, and it's good for the students. I don't know if they realise just how good that is. But yeah, so once it's done, you can see the possibles there. Once it's done, obviously I want to go to get funding in order to, but from the Virtual Cities Limited point, linking with the university and other organisations, to go for funding so that we can finish this as 2 complete eras of the city. When that's done, you will have an Unreal file, all the buildings, some of which you can go in and walk around, can be used for backdrops, can be used for storytelling, can be used for tours around the city, can be used for going in as an educational group and having a lecture or some such in VR. So many different possibilities once this has been built. Yeah, you probably think even more, yeah, of the different possibilities than I've mentioned. But as for research and data, you will have a record of significant buildings within Winchester that has that conservation data attached to it, very much like the Notre Dame in Paris when it was burnt, and somebody had done a 3D model of it. A company had got the 3D model of it, and they've been trying to, I think, I may have got this wrong, but they've been building it bearing that model in mind, or using that model to see how it was reconstructed, you know, how it's constructed to reconstruct it. So the 3D models that are being built of all these wonderful places should become part of your X-archiving, should become part of Sketchfab and similar entities that collate all these models. And we are just one little, you know, the work we're doing is just one little part of that, hopefully, so that these buildings can be reused and the information available to anyone who's interested. So that's part of the commercialization aspect of Virtual Cities Limited. And obviously writing the process, and I've heard lots of different processes mentioned, writing down the process as we go through the funding aspect. If we get the funding and go through the bigger thing, hopefully we'll then develop or write a book or whatever form of material for people to follow this process so that they can actually recreate it themselves, because we're very keen that this is, again, not just a one thing that just sits there and gets forgotten, that other people can do this in different cities. Yeah, so why now? Yeah, because we have wonderful little laptops like this that you can actually create this stuff on, all right? One person can actually do this in their little world, joining up with another person in their little world, creating all this different content and then putting it all together. I haven't yet managed, and Sam knows this, I haven't yet managed to share my Unreal file because I need to strip it of quite a lot of materials that come in with the different student models, and so it's bloated the file. So I now need to strip those out, but I didn't want to do that before today. So once that's done, we should be able to then share this, and then people should be able to access it to add their own models into it. A conference I went to ages ago, they had a really nice idea of creating part of, I think it was somewhere in America, a Citibank area or something, where they actually put it out to the community to build a building, or if they wanted to. So you would get all these different buildings coming in, which then formed the scene. So that was pretty cool. Whether I could actually do that, I don't know. But it's really important now headsets, so much better to use. Metaverse is taking off. The heritage industry itself is taking off, partly because of the interest, just personal interest and organizational interest. But ecotourism, as was mentioned earlier, being able to come and visit and see these things without actually having to get on a plane, is not quite the same experience, but at least you can actually walk around and roam around the city of Winchester, perhaps, but maybe not see everything. Yeah, maybe you've got to keep some of it back, unless you were here, not necessarily walk into everything. And maybe we get a membership model or something. Things are yet to be worked out, but basically, we would like people to be able to visit virtually the city of Winchester, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. So this was June 22 progress. This is May 23 progress. A similar-ish scene. You see the map was in use in the previous one. It still is in use in this one. I've just hidden it here. And then we didn't even have the MEDI, this 1400 site. Now we've got that in the 1400 site. So you can see they're slightly differently populated with buildings, but the area, and it's not finished by any means, especially this area, there's some buildings missing. But if I take you into Unreal, you can see what I mean. So there is, I'll just show you this bit first. Don't ignore the woman. It's the only thing I could find to make it to look people-sized. Okay, so but if I use, let's do this. So if I don't play games, by the way, so this is all new to me. So if I move her along, and when she goes onto that portal, which we can disguise, it then flips through, as I say, a bit of a delay. Quite a bit of a delay. It will come, it will happen, promise. There we go. So you can then, you're then in exactly the same spot in the 1400s, looking slightly differently, admittedly, but you're there. Yeah. So that's what it looked like in 1400. So no Jane Austen house, no long street of anything. It was completely different. So I can go up that. Oh, I've gone back to the 1800. Okay. So as soon as you step over the portal, you can then go back. So I'll close that, and then if I whisk up here, my computer sings a bit, I must say. But at the moment, what we've got is some dubious materials, okay, for some of the buildings. But that is part and parcel of the next stage in making sure that the materials are the correct materials for Hampshire, let alone Winchester, or Winchester, let alone Hampshire, if you see what I mean. The cathedral here is just a paper-thin placeholder, made to look all right, if you like. But you can see that, Dome Alley is there, this building's here. Some of them are done in Revit, some of them are done in Blender. And these ones here were just quickly done in Revit, Autodesk Revit, in order to show as placeholders of buildings. So again, with funding, if it's a particularly historic building or significant building, they'll get replaced with a proper building, and so end up looking much more like these here. Okay, and then let's go in here. You go into Jane Austen's room, and I don't know what that's looking like. Oh. There we go. Is that looking right up there? Yep. So this is, as I say, free. They're actually free models from TurboSquid. placed to what would look like possibly Jane Austen's drawing room, or living room, or whatever, with the panelling and so on. All needs verification, and therefore people like Ryan and Chawton House people and so on could actually verify some of the information. But I have looked through the Chawton information and tried to find what would be there. But yeah, so you can see that Unreal is pretty cool at making things look very nice. And then the lighting in Unreal 5 is really nice. I have an issue with this file still with the materials because it's telling me that I'm running out, hence the scalability high here rather than epic, because it kind of wants to break on me at that point. So once we've tidied the file up, it will be better. But yes, you can see that that is the area there for that. Okay. But here we have the 1400 map. And the landmass, not the far distant landmass, but the landmass around the buildings that we're doing is more or less correct at the moment. But again, that needs checking on the next stage properly. So there you can see that's how it looked in the 1400. And you've got Nunnaminster, as I call it, but it's St Mary's at the back there, just done this semester by one of our students, and Wolsey Castle in the background there, as it would have been in the 1400. It's not finished. It's a couple of the towers that look really brilliant, which one of the students have done. But yeah, so you can see it's not necessarily a quick task. And if I come down to ground level, I spent personally a fair bit of time. I'm sorry, I won't be much longer, so you can believe. Putting vines, apple trees and crops and stuff in as the monks would have perhaps farmed at the time. And you got your cattle, somebody said about a cow earlier, about measuring a cow. So then there's pigs here and so on. But it's trying to make it lived in is the next stage, so that people lived there, and so there'll be people and there'll be more of the bits added in, so that you'll be able to walk around there and actually have a feel of other people being there. So yeah, so that's it. Thank you very much. So, any questions? No.
So blending real and imagined spaces.
All right. All right. Yeah.
So you could have the Wessex of Alfred and the Wessex.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you blend those together. So
yeah.
Literature students and creative writing students.
Yeah.
And you bring the whole lot together. And that's to also develop a citation convention for these types of experiences, so that if somebody's looking at that wall or that shape of that building, that you can actually refer back to the source.
Yes.
And so
yes.
on. And that's reflected in people's bibliographies,
yeah.
so that the academics who are involved are then cited, and it's a two-way process.
Yep.
It's really important to develop that set of conventions that, in the way that map
yes.
people.
Yeah.
It took 200 or 300 years for those conventions to be developed. That a certain wavy line means this and this means that.
Yeah.
So to have that palette.
Yes.
That's one thing that can emerge from something like this. So that it can lead to a national historic building inventory of URI, so that you can actually begin. You have
Correct.
that as a full repository, and to work with existing digital repositories to how to store this type of information and all the links, so that it's all preserved in one as a wrapper.
Yeah, I'm very keen on that.
And then to unlock material that's held in archives, especially blueprints and building schematics, which are the most popular, and that's their main source of income is planning. So a planner, somebody wants to build something, they go to the archive or local record office and they say, can you pull up this? They charge for that service.
Yeah.
So there's a way of
doing that here.
Yeah,
cool.
But it's to develop the conventions in such a way that you can build up a patchwork. So if you wanted to link Winchester and Bath with another city, you could begin, and then it becomes a patchwork quilt.
Yeah.
Eventually, but one that's always traceable back to the source object.
Yep.
And the scholarship that's gone in, and whether you can differentiate between information with a 90% chance of certainty because of one, or is it just best guess, is it conjecture, and then be able to also show in one of these whether there's a dispute between scholars.
Okay,
so you can say,
it's quite cool,
Scholar A thinks that this type of thing means this, but actually this is disputed in the same way that you can do that with journal, with somebody writing.
Really cool.
And then you have all the reviews and journal articles that follow and counter arguments.
I like that.
Against.
I like that.
That's visually represented.
Yeah.
That's a sustainable, agreed, internationally agreed palette.
Very good. I definitely, so the heritage building information model data is for the buildings in that sense, but all the research will be added to as a data field in this, hopefully, with some programming, because you can do blueprints in Unreal, and I think you can add that kind of data information using blueprints. I've not done it yet. It's something to learn, but yes.
And then you get the whole issue with paywalls, and you know, if you wanted to link back to a source article and it's actually now being, you have to pay for it because it's behind an Elsevier paywall, and you get all those sorts of issues. How much is open? How much is closed? How much is in the public and private domain? And it's the same issue you get with other types of less sophisticated digital information. The connectivity is not necessarily straightforward.
Okay, that sounds very good. Sounds very good to think about adding, doesn't it? Seeing John nodding his head. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Any other questions?
So I was, as you were showing sort of maybe just help us I don't sketch out how it looks. You get download the FBX, but is that maybe to embed that big information into those?
If it's a Revit model, yeah, this has been a bit of a problem. So once the Revit model, if the Revit model itself is saved out as an FBX, it should retain some of that metadata. It doesn't seem to retain all of it. But there will be a way of programming in to include that, I think, okay? Because what my process is currently is Revit, for me, Revit, 3D Max, Unreal. And that's because if you take Revit, as I showed the students the other day, in fact, this building proves it. Is it that building? No, it's in the other level. When you take a building from Revit directly into, or even Blender directly into Unreal, the Revit, it's basic wall number, basic wall number, basic wall. So you can have lots and lots of basic walls with a unique number. Okay, you haven't got a clue as to what wall that is if you wanted to do something to it in Unreal. So there's a renaming convention that goes on in 3D Max of all the parts, all the walls, windows, blah. And sometimes the windows don't even go in particularly well, so that the blocks, the glazing becomes obscured, you can't see through it. Sometimes you have to delete it. Even if you apply a proper glass material, it doesn't seem to want to work because it's double paned. And also you're trying to also eradicate some of the duplicate faces, if you see what I mean. So I never use a wall, say with in Revit, they're all built, they're all proper walls. So when you draw a wall, it's got insulation, air gap, and all this kind of stuff. So you need to build a wall or create a wall style that is just stone, so it's just 4 faces to create the wall. So it's all that kind of stuff, right? But then, of course, if you then take out the fact that it's got air and all those things, you need to then put in the data for this new wall that you've created. The fact that it's going to be, I don't know, stone and flint, or flint and brick, or whatever. So you need to add that information in. So that all happens in 3D Max, and Revit and 3D Max, that's fine. But when it's exported out as an FBX again, some of that information is lost. And when you bring it into Unreal, again, that information is lost. So I need to actually discover whether you can actually just build all that information in Unreal and not worry too much, but you've got a record of it in the original building. So again, the building that goes into Unreal is going to be a different building, the same building, but different building than the one that goes up to Sketchfab, because sometimes the textures and things just go like this, you know, so it could look beautiful in 3D Max and you put it up to Sketchfab and it's, it doesn't look nice at all. Or if you take it into Unreal, it then doesn't look very nice. So the systems themselves don't seem to work the same for every piece of software. And so there seems, even though FBX is a standard generic format, actually the way it's treated going into other software is not the same, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it's a learning curve, always, but there's fun in that.
You said roughly right.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you using LiDAR?
Yeah, there's a LiDAR map underneath this, but the lands, I've got to redo it. Not the LiDAR one, but the landmass, because so we've got these down here, and then we've got the sort of like if I put that on, no, I've hidden it, so I can't see it. So that's just the map, and then you've got this information that was a GIS export from LiDAR information or similar. Yeah, so we've got the contours in there, but this part of Winchester, there's mostly just a slope going up. This area, there is still a slope, but obviously with the buildings. So in order to put the building in and not the building sitting into a slope, I've had to flatten underneath the building. So you know, if you built a building, you'd have to put a pad in, wouldn't you? You'd have to build a platform for the building to be on, the concrete base or whatever it was. Wouldn't be concrete in the 1400s, would it? But you know what I'm saying, yeah? So you'd have, so the floor is, you're not going to have a floor like that in your house, are you? It's going to be like that. So it needs to be cut. So the land on either side of that cut, what do you do with it? Do you bring it all down, or do you bring it up, or how do you shape it around the house? Do you see what I'm saying? Did that? Yeah. Because otherwise it comes up around the windows, maybe. So I don't know if that.
I suppose it depends on, I guess, the resolution of the zoning. Looking at the file names there.
Where?
If you're lucky enough to live in an area that's liable to flooding,
Yes.
you can get a really good environment agency data that has about 50 centimetre resolution.
Yes.
And you might find that's less of an issue, with, sort of cutting into your buildings, because the terrain is at such a macro scale.
Yeah, if I go to, let's go to front view, and you can see that the terrain is there. Yeah, and it's the wrong side, presumably. Go to the back, it's in shadow, of course. So there is some different heights there. And you can see it's gradually going up from the cathedral, but even more so back there. Okay, so it's just, at the moment, because that information is now, do you know what I mean? That that landmass information that you were going to go and grab is now, where it's slightly different back then. Yeah, in the 1400s, it would have been slightly different with I don't know, I'm not a geologist or whatever, but maybe some erosion or whatever, and silting, or I don't know, but it's going to be different. So does anyone know if you can get 1400 light hour information? But yeah, so it's stuff I still need to look at, but that will come, because this is just a prototype. So when we come, and a way of working out how we can do this and the process of doing so. Okay, so then if I'm successful with funding to take this to the full city, we will have it so that there's more people on board with expert knowledge about some of these areas that myself and students aren't so expert at. Does that make sense? Yeah. Sorry, I'm keeping you. So, yeah, are you okay? Any other questions? Yes.
Just got a comment really, thinking about the fact that the way the city sort of ebbs and flows in terms of its geology and landscape. The bit of street on High Street that goes up to the West Gate has a man-made dip, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And that would be fantastic to see from 1400 to 1800 how much that dip sort of increases.
Yeah.
Between those years.
Yeah.
Because this,
yeah, because this is this the, where am I? 1400, aren't I? So in the 1400, of course, you've got the ditch for the castle wall, coming down from the castle. So you've got this ditch. So I don't know actually how deep that ditch is. Okay, so I've literally guessed to give it some, looking at the pictures that I've got to go by, I've guessed at the depth of that ditch. I've got the width, but I haven't got the depth. Yeah, so it's this information that is needed in order to make it real. Yeah, so that only goes to that down to Kingsgate down there, down to there, and then of course it's not on the other side. It's been filled in on the other side. And then it appears again further down. So on the map anyway. So yeah.
Do you think these will work with Kew or
Sorry?
National Garden Museum or Kew?
Yeah.
Data sets of people who are experts on historic plants.
Yeah, because for Bewley Abbey and Hyde Abbey, I want to do the the medical garden, if you like, medicine garden, and putting all the garden plant, all the plants in, the herbs in, and doing all of that. So that's what would be needed. Yeah. So.
I've been very popular that people are companies.
Right. Yeah.
Garden, which is
all right.
really popular.
Yeah. Yeah. But building these places and making stories happen, so that people can explore whatever age is really good. So much like your work, their work, Qatar and so on.
I always think that what's really the valuable thing is looking beyond this and say the value is in putting the people together who are.
Yes.
And once the people who are an engineer get put together with an ecologist or an expert on
exactly right.
Is put together with a TV filmmaker, and then you get completely new knowledge that you have not anticipated happens. Yeah. And also new products happen that you never could have anticipated. Yeah. And that comes from building friendships between people, and it's what this is a friendship building engine. Yeah, it is, and again, the PhD was very much a case of bringing all of those people together at the beginning, and also a visitor or visitors as part of it, so that all the way through everyone has a part to play in this. And it's archiving the whole process and wrapping the whole lot up, making it sustainable, transferable, replicable is the key to it. The more you do it, the cheaper it gets, the easier it gets. The more marriage. Perfect. Yeah. The result of the things, the more friendship. And it's a consistent collaboration as well, so that people know what it's about, and therefore they've not got a learning curve every time they start a project. So it's a collaboration multiplier. Yeah, yeah.
So I know you know this, don't you, Campbell? Really, it's a team that's important at the end of the day, and the skills that you bring together and how they work as a team. That's the most important thing of all. Yeah. So and that common language that someone, was it you said earlier, or somebody said earlier, there's a common language as well. I'm keeping you, and there's wine out there. But have you got anything else? No, you're all right.
Thank you to you for your time today.
Oh, thank you, Campbell.
Thank you, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, just very grateful to you turning up and coming along and giving me such wonderful talks. So there's been such a breadth of different things, but all with the same vein. So it's been really good. So hopefully next year we can do something bigger, more prep to it. Well, it's not so much the prep as the marketing and getting it out there. So.
And in the meantime, come to the conference of Kings.
I will be there. I will be there. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.